Hey guys, so I'm here to help you figure out this crisscross worksheet. It's really not that bad. So let me point out some things. Notice that there are some things written in red that are not on your worksheet. Notice that there's a darker black line in between the n minus 3 and the OH minus 1. These are all things we're going to point out right now. So first of all, on the left-hand side, all of those things are positive, right? So those are the metal ions. They're metals that have a charge. They've lost electrons. Cesium here lost only one electron, so it's a plus 1. Anytime you see a plus or a minus without a number, the number is always 1, okay? So here's strontium. Strontium lost 2 electrons, so that would be a plus 2. Oxygen over here is a minus 2, and that means it gained 2 electrons, and nitrogen has a minus 3. Now, this says monatomic ions. That's a fancy word for saying a single element that lost an electron or gained an electron. Monatomic meaning one atom, and ions meaning something that has either lost or gained electrons more than it does have protons. So these up here are nonmetals, and they have gained electrons, which is why they are minuses. Remember, electrons are negative by charge. So notice over here it says polyatomic ions. Now, polyatomic ions are just what it says. Many is what poly refers to. Many atoms that have an ion or a charge. So this right here is oxygen and hydrogen together. Together for one oxygen, one hydrogen makes a minus 1 charge. One chromium, 4 oxygens makes a minus 2 charge. One phosphorus and 4 oxygens makes a minus 3 charge. Lots of polyatomic ions have something and then oxygen attached to it. Okay, so here's what it looks like. Here's how we write formulas when we have ions. So that means we have cesium with a plus 1 and bromine with a minus 1. So this would be bromide. Okay, so notice that the crisscross goes like this. Whatever the plus charge is for the metal, that number gets written down below for the subscript of the nonmetal or the second element. Whatever the plus or minus charge is for the second element, almost always a minus, it comes down as a subscript. Okay, now here's the big deal. Here's why you don't see anything here. Because cesium has a plus 1 and we don't write 1s for subscripts. Okay, that's why it doesn't look like there's anything there. So the plus 1 comes down and I don't have to write a 1 down at all. The minus 1 comes down, I drop the minus, and we don't have to write the 1 at all. So to answer this correctly up here, all I'd have to do is honestly just type in capital C, lowercase s, capital B, lowercase r. It's very important that we get the capitals for the first letter and lowercase for the second letter always, if there is a second letter. Otherwise, it's going to look very confusing when we come over to the polyatomic ions. Okay, I want to show you strontium. Strontium has a plus 2 and bromine still has a minus 1. So here you can actually see something happen. So the minus 1 for bromine comes down and we drop the minus, but we don't write 1s at all. Again, but this has a plus 2 and we drop the plus and the 2 comes down. So here you see the 2 here is a subscript, but it's for bromine. That means if strontium has a plus 2 and each bromine has a minus 1, that means I can give the extra 2 electrons, 1 each to 2 bromines. So that's where that 2 comes in like that. So if I go back to do this again, like this, I would write SR, BR, and then I have to come down here to do my little subscript, and I put a 2 in there. So SRBR2. Remember that 2 comes from the plus 2 from strontium. Okay, if I'm doing the same thing here, now look how it goes. I don't have it written out like I do down below, but watch how this works though. So I get CS for cesium, that's a plus 1. The 1 comes down for oxygen, but notice that there's a 2 here. That means that 2 has to crisscross down as a subscript for cesium, like this. And then oxygen, like that. So cesium oxide is CS2O1, and we don't write 1s. So that 2 came down as a 2 for cesium. So what do you think the next one's going to be then? All right, well, let's take a look at the next one. The next one is cesium and nitrogen. Now, nitrogen has a -3. Cesium still has a +1. So we're going to do capital C, S, and then instead of nothing here, or instead of a 2, this is going to be a 3. So we go subscript 3, turn that off, and then I go back to N, like that. Notice that the +1 for cesium doesn't show up down here because we don't write ones. Good. So what am I doing here if I got strontium? Well, when I do strontium now, notice that the 2 comes down for bromine, and there's a minus there. So what happens if I have to write 2 and 2, as in like strontium has the 2, so we do SR, notice there's a 2 here, and if I put a 2 in like this is going to take me a second to do this, trying to do it quickly, and oxygen, and 2 like that. Now take a look at this. If we have 2 elements and they both have 2's, then we can cancel them out. In other words, it's like having a fraction of 2 over 2. We don't have to write that at all. We can just write 1, and we don't write 1's. So SRO would be the correct answer for the next one. Take a look at SR with a +2 and N with a -3. Now we're still going to crisscross, and the crisscross looks like the 3 comes down for SR and the +2 comes down for N. So it's going to be SR like this, 3, N, 2. Exactly like that. That's it. That's what the crisscross means. Now we got one little wrinkle. I'm just about finished, and here's the, if you think you got the left-hand side with the monatomic ions, there is only one little change for the polyatomic ions. Okay, and this is where sometimes it starts to get a little confusing for people, but it's really not that confusing. Notice how for cesium with a +1 and hydroxide with a -1, that's OH, OH with a -1, that when I do the same thing, notice how close it looks. It looks like it's the same thing, right? Where we have CSBr and no numbers, and we have CSOH and no numbers. So that's true. That happens just like that. The difference you're going to notice, though, is not in the first one, but it's in strontium. Notice how when I put the 2 down here, I don't just put the 2 outside the H. I literally have to put parentheses in to make sure that it's obvious that the O and the H are together. That means that there are 2 O's and 2 H's because we multiply, okay, whatever's outside the parentheses by the numbers inside. So this is OH, and I have 2 OH's, and that's why we use the parentheses. So of course this looks like this, CS, and then I do parentheses, OH, parentheses, and then I do the 2. Okay, I'm going to do one more to show you up here. Let me finish that one off with the 2. There we go. Okay. There. Now, so let's take a look at one more up here. Notice I got cesium. I got cesium like this. It has the +1. Here's a -2. So what do we do with the -2 over here? Well, we put the 2 down as a subscript. Nothing changes. We're going to do exactly the same. So I put the 2 down as a subscript and get rid of that. And now, because cesium is not putting anything down here, I don't have to use a parentheses. So if we don't put a number down at the bottom, we don't need parentheses. Notice that chromate is CrO4, and I must include all of that, including the 4. So I go CrO4 like that, and that's it. Okay. What happens if we have, and I'm going to move this one here, I'm going to move this up a little bit so it doesn't get in the way, and give myself a whole lot of room here. Now, one more example, and we'll see how you guys do with this. If I have SR with a +2 and I got a -2, then it's just like this one where we had the +2, the 2 comes down here, and the 2 comes down here. So we can just write this one as SR and then CrO4, and we don't have to change anything. No subscripts, no new subscripts, and no parentheses. Like that. All right. Sounds good. So, if you're wondering, let's just keep it like that and see how you guys do. I can add on to this if you need me to. All right, guys. Good luck. Let me know a question.